Hello, this is Julia Widup with Talk Story TV, and I have with me this morning Marilyn Redmond, and Marilyn's going to talk to us about her personal and professional experiences with mind control. So, good morning.
Glad to be here today.
I'm glad to have you, and I'm very interested to hear about, you had an experience this morning with attempted mind control, it sounds like.
Well, yes, I did. It's been a long journey to move out of that position. I was raised in an environment that was very toxic, very controlling and manipulative. And so I know today you attract what you are. So guess what? I contracted more controlling, manipulative people in my life.
Yes.
And that included, and I know that you asked me about the various places, but that included church and medicine and schools and different institutions. And I've learned that we have been very conditioned to be fearful and victims. And in doing that, when you feel that you don't have any worth and you are a very needy person and you feel helpless, it's very easy to have somebody mind control you. Mm-hmm. You're kind of like sitting prey.
Yes, and don't you think that so much television watching almost conditions us to be susceptible to mind control?
I have come to understand it's purposely being done to be mind control.